Hi, it's Christina with the Sisyphean Journal. Today's July 7th. I covered 2 abortion deaths already, and I'll link to those stories below. And today we're going to look at one that's a little unusual in that I have a ton of information. On the morning of July 7th, 1941, 27-year-old Emma awoke as usual and prepared breakfast for her taxi driver husband Earl and their 2 daughters. At around 3:30 p.m., Emma went to the office of Dr. Nathaniel Schaffner in Chicago, accompanied by Earl and the little girl that they had, who was 4 years old. Now, this was her 3rd visit. She and Earl had first gone to Schaffner's office on June 27th after getting the doctor's name and address provided by Earl's co-worker when he'd asked for help finding an abortionist. During the first visit, Earl said that Dr. Schaffner had examined Emma, verified she was pregnant, and quoted a fee for the abortion, and they dickered the price down a bit. It's really unclear when the money changed hands. Emma went back herself for the second visit. Schaffner said that he had just told Emma not to go through with the planned abortion. Well, the fatal day came around. Emma and Earl went to Schaffner's office, and Schaffner asked Emma if she was ready, and she said yes, and he asked Earl permission to go ahead with this. So Earl waited in the outer office with their little girl while Schaffner brought Emma into the inner office, positioned her on an exam table, and put her feet in the stirrups. Now, about 5 minutes later, Earl said that he heard Emma cry out, "I thought you said this wasn't going to hurt." And Earl said that he heard Schaffner's voice but couldn't make out what he was saying. Emma then called out, "I can't breathe, I can't breathe." Earl rushed into the room to find Schaffner at the foot of the table removing one of Emma's feet from the stirrup. Emma tried to sit up, but she collapsed, so Schaffner half-carried, half-dragged Emma from his exam room into another room and laid her on the couch. Earl said that Emma's color was pasty. Dr. Schaffner injected something into Emma's arm and listened to her chest with a stethoscope. So Schaffner administered an injection and attempted artificial respiration, but to no avail, and Earl later told police that Emma had died, quote, "practically in my arms." And to compound the tragedy, Emma had died on the couple's 7th wedding anniversary. Earl said that Schaffner told him, "Now don't get excited, I will take care of everything. I will pay for all the funeral arrangements and everything else. Just be quiet, don't tell anybody about it. My career is at stake." Then, Earl said, Schaffner went into the exam room and came out with an instrument in his hand. It was chrome metal, about 13 inches long, with a handle at one end and a tubular extension with a little pea-sized bulb at the end. "I don't know why she should die," Earl said. Schaffner told him, "This is all I used on her." So, at Schaffner's request, Earl filled out a blue paper and took his daughter home. Meanwhile, Schaffner put Emma back on the exam table, closed the door, and left her body there while he continued to treat other patients in his office until 8:30 p.m. Now, after treating his last patient of the day, Schaffner went to Earl's house and spoke to him and his sister-in-law, Teresa Gross. According to Teresa and Earl, Schaffner gave the grieving husband a card with a funeral director's name on it, telling him, "This is a friend of mine. He will take care of the arrangements." Schaffner offered $500 to cover the cost. He explained that the undertaker would not come to his office to collect Emma's body, so I think the undertaker knew what was up. He didn't want anything fishy looking going on. So Schaffner said he would bring the body to Emma's home and it could be collected there. So he said, "We will call her death heart trouble and mark that on the death certificate. My reputation is at stake. I'll have to commit suicide if you go to the police." And Teresa asked Schaffner what he had done to her sister, and he'd replied, "All I did was scrape her a little bit." He then returned to his office, wrapped Emma's body in a gray blanket. He later testified, "I got the body downstairs myself. Rigor mortis had set in. The body was almost like a board. I lifted it all the way down and rested it on my knees as I was advancing toward the street." Well, this is the middle of the night. He said he was going to do this between 1 and 3 a.m. Did anybody see this? Now, what happens next is unclear, but somehow by the time Schaffner got to Emma's house, the police were there. So he took off, and Schaffner was arrested about 2:30 a.m. on July 8th in an alley behind his sister's home. He said he wasn't Schaffner, he was somebody named Phillips, but he was identified by Emma's brother-in-law. Now, post-mortem examination confirmed that Emma had died from an abortion that had been initiated but not completed. Her 3.5-month unborn son was still in her uterus. Chemical analysis of the fluid in Emma's uterus showed that it contained some ordinary soaps and cresols, and there was hemorrhage in the uterine wall. And injecting an irritant to cause an abortion was not weird at the time, so don't go, oh, so because it was illegal. There was no damage to the vagina or cervix. So apparently the toxic materials had been deposited directly into the uterus with some form of instrument. And Emma had been healthy with no injuries or ailments that could have accounted for her death. So the medical examiner concluded she died from shock caused by the chemicals. Now, this was not Dr. Schaffner's first brush with the law. He'd served time in Leavenworth Federal Prison on a narcotics charge. His license had been revoked, but he did manage to get it back in 1935. So, in Emma's case, it was absolutely indisputable that he had broken laws. He'd failed to report the death and had given police a false name when they came to arrest him. He faced murder charges and a possible death sentence. Okay, this is part of why all these doctors were arguing, we have to legalize, we have to legalize, we have to legalize. People that were, whose danger they were truly worried about wasn't the women's, it was their own danger. The poo-poo could hit the fan and hit it hard if a woman died when abortion was illegal. When it's legal, it's a big deal, right? So a jury of 3 women and 9 men heard the case. Now, Schaffner insisted during his trial that he had examined Emma and confirmed the pregnancy, and said that Earl had offered him $40 to perpetrate an abortion, but he'd refused on the grounds that it was too risky due to the advanced state of pregnancy. And he said that Emma had been weak and barely ambulatory when she and Earl had arrived at the office, that she was pale, her breathing was rapid and shallow, and she complained of radiating pelvic pain, and they had just put her on the table for an examination and used forceps and cotton balls to swab out cloudy fluid from her uterus. And he said it was at that point that Emma said she couldn't breathe, and Earl came into the room. And Schaffner said that after he had pronounced Emma dead, Earl had cried out, "Why did I do it? Why did I do it?" And that Schaffner, responded, "Well, I warned you not to do anything. I told you it was real risky and dangerous. It looks like you have ruptured the sack of water." And he said that Earl replied, "No, we didn't rupture no sack of water. We didn't do anything. The only thing we've done, we've tried every kind of medicine to use." So that was his story. Now, the outcome, the jury did not believe Schaffner. He was convicted of murder and sentenced to 14 years in prison. He appealed his sentence, but it was upheld in 1943. He was released in September of 1951 and immediately went back to perpetrating abortions. He just couldn't stop it. He got caught when he returned to an 18-year-old patient's home and raped her. The woman's husband and father ambushed him, beat him up, and dumped him by the side of the road. And after his arrest for this, he was finally committed to a state institution for the criminally insane. So this is a really sad case, and this guy was definitely a piece of work.